We're here. Hello and welcome to a quarantine version of Two Piece Podcast. I am your co-host Amelia.
And I'm your other co-host Carly.
Perfect. It's nice to see everybody. Just kidding. We
can't.
Yeah. But hey.
Yeah, we're trying this new thing out, this new modality of video, because we can't, we could technically be together, but this is just so much fun. Yeah. And so, yeah, we're going to be posting this audio onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts as always, and then we'll post the video to be determined, I guess.
Somewhere. Vimeo?
Yeah, somewhere. Yep. I think we can post it to Instagram, though. Right? Can't we?
Like an IGTV?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Perfect. So
Smoking.
Perfect. So today in our episode, we're going to be talking about body image, which I feel like, honestly, thinking about it now, I never really thought about this, but like during quarantine too, I don't know about you, Carls, do you feel like you're seeing like a lot of people talk about their bodies more? Are you paying more attention to your body? Like I've seen, like obviously the gyms are closed and it's hard to find motivation to work out. Like I was good for the first 2 weeks and then I was like, yeah, I'm so tired. It's kind of timely. How do you feel? Like what have you been noticing?
I agree. I think that the conversation surrounding body image has definitely been amplified just because, we've been home munching alone with our thoughts, watching the LBs maybe happening. Maybe you've been great. Maybe you've been on a routine, you've been running or doing at-home workouts, but definitely like I've had my slacking moments, but to know that that's okay is oh, something made a noise. Sorry.
My phone.
I don't know if that was me.
I got an email.
Sorry. Anyway. It's okay. No, I peed my pants a little bit. But yeah, I was saying, I think we're definitely noticing that more because we're on our devices, we're looking inward a lot more, we're by ourselves, alone with our thoughts, that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely. I've noticed it more.
Well, yeah, it's good. It's timely that we're talking about this then. I just didn't even think about that until right now. I'm like, oh yeah, it's probably something that people are noticing. And I see a lot of people on Instagram too just say like, oh, gotta get back to the gym as soon as it's open, or oh, I've gained some weight. Like it's okay. Like it's okay. Whatever you have to do to get through a pandemic, just don't put pressure on yourself to keep your routine up. I know it's good to keep a routine, but it's hard not to feel exhausted, and it's okay just to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, and like let yourself enjoy like a cupcake, maybe not like 16 cupcakes, but one cupcake, because I find that if I personally restrict myself and I say no sugar, no cupcakes, then I will engage obviously in the binge eating at like 10 p.m. on my bed watching Never Have I Ever, or that's just what I've been doing lately. So
Never Have I Ever.
It's fabulous. It's this new show on Netflix, and I think Mindy Kaling wrote it.
I love her.
Yeah, I think you would dig it. Yeah, there's a hot man involved, so.
Interesting. Okay, I'm into it. I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, I agree. One cupcake, couple cupcakes, all good. Right? Binge eating, maybe not the best, but
exactly.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Everything in moderation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Including your workout routine too.
Just integrate that. It's good to keep into your routine, but don't beat yourself up if you're not.
Exactly. These are strange times, so.
Strange times.
We're all evolving and, out of routine, so that's okay. Just the fact that we can be aware and accepting of our bodies and where we're at right now is a beautiful thing.
I agree. That's good. I'm excited about this episode too. I feel like I used to do a lot of like stuff with women, a lot of like self-empowerment type projects. And I think a lot of the reason I did them was because I was struggling so much with my image. But in the last couple of years, I just haven't really found the time to do them. And maybe, I think the last one I did was about 2 years ago, just because life got busy and I kind of shifted my focus into other things and really pressed into poetry and writing about mental health more. Although body image is mental health. I just talked a lot more about like depression and anxiety and created a conversation about that. But I'm really excited to kind of come back to this and talk to our audience and each other about body image.
I agree, girl.
Good.
It's very important.
Do you want me to go ahead with my...
Yeah, delve in.
Sounds good. Okay. So I have some notes here, so I'm just going to be reading. And it's funny, like, seeing ourselves too, because I feel like my gestures and everything are like a huge part of the way I talk. So I'm
Totally
excited to, like, show that to our audience too.
Yeah, and I make just wacky faces all the time, so it'll be good.
It'll be good. I love the wacky faces. All right, so creating a conversation around body positivity, I find, and I'm sure Carls, you agree too, that it's very difficult because we're taught that beautiful is sort of this narrow definition that only a few people are allowed to be a part of. And that's just, to me, that's unfair. And it makes a lot of people feel like, oh, well, if I don't look like that, then I'm not beautiful. And to me, if you look at like a 6-foot model who's tiny, has long legs, long torso, whatever her body type is, but maybe your body type is different and you're not going to ever look like that, how on earth are we ever supposed to feel beautiful when that's something that we're never going to achieve because it's physically impossible? So I do feel grateful that in the last couple of years, all body types are starting to be celebrated. As much as, you know, some people love or hate the Kardashians, they have sort of cultivated this conversation around curves. And they have promoted, I mean, in a lot of ways, like I know they're still very concerned about their weight, but they do promote body positivity in a lot of ways because they are curvier girls. And there's, I think for a long time, that stick thin figure was what was beautiful. And they kind of stepped onto the scene and it felt like, okay, well, I don't have to be stick thin to be beautiful. And they're not the standard either, but I just liked how they kind of brought up this diverse body type. And like I said, love them or hate them. I think that that's kind of a positive thing that came out of that as a family. What do
And
you
like other campaigns, like the Dove campaign and stuff like that. Like I remember growing up and seeing, like, we didn't really see a lot of diversity on screen or in even in like cartoons and you know, various shows that we would watch as kids on Family Channel. There wasn't this amount of diversity, so it's really been refreshing to see how that's evolved over time. And how, I mean, even like the work that you've put out there, and I know other people have done, and Dove, and I can't even think of any other. I think Gap has been involved in some stuff, and just other companies that have really expressed that has been really helpful to me, and I'm sure loads of other people too.
Absolutely. I love Dove. I actually remember I wrote them a letter and I sent it to their head office.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I wanted to collaborate with them, but they were so kind. They're like, you know, we already have like our photographers and our videographers and everything, and I respected that. But it was really nice because they sent me a letter back. They didn't just email me. They didn't just not respond to me. They just sent me a letter back and just said, like, if there's anything you ever want to talk about, like, feel free to reach out. Here's my number. We can always have a conversation about like body positivity. And to me, I just feel like that company is so different and they do so much for their people. And I personally had such a positive experience, and seeing their campaigns too, it's genuine. It's not just let's do this to make some sales. It's let's do this to create a conversation where not just one body type is celebrated.
And what a personal experience that you had with them. And you don't see that, like, Dove is quite a large company.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't see that from a lot of companies. So that's really great that they wrote you back and that they gave you like a phone number, and that's pretty sweet.
I was just like, I'm just going to do it. I think I found like their address online or something. I just researched it a bit and sent them a letter to their head office in Canada. I think it was, the East Coast, I believe. And yeah, he just sent me a letter back because I was wanting to work with them. And he just said, you know, like, we actually just hire internally and everything. But yeah, just sending me like a nice, kind message and saying that if I ever had any questions or concerns, just to reach out. I mean, that means a lot because, like you said, they are a really big company, and most companies would shred a letter or just throw it out. So I like that.
For sure. There are companies that I wish would, from my experience, would be better with that, like Victoria's Secret. I don't often like going in there because to me, from my from my own lens, a lot of those bodies are very similar. They don't really have plus size models. And so when they come out with their yearly, I know everyone loves to watch this, and I do too. Like, I love seeing the fashion, but their runway, their yearly, whatever that's called, fashion show or whatever. I don't know. It definitely doesn't do good stuff to my self-esteem. That's for sure.
Right. I don't watch it. I've actually never watched it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not that I don't think that it's not that I think it's such a bad thing, because they are celebrating like their bras and underwear. Like, that's what they sell, and it's a big in the fashion world. But yeah, just from like a personal experience, I think watching that, it's hard. It's hard to watch all of these 6-foot models that are tiny and have these perfect proportionate bodies, and they're not a realistic kind of person. And to me, like, I just don't think that I'm in a place in my life, maybe, or was in a place in my life where I could watch that and leave feeling good about myself. I've seen like photos and everything, but yeah, I've just kind of made that point to not watch it, because the negativity, and even hearing other people on social media talk about it after they watch it, they say like, haha, I was stuffing my face with pizza while I was watching it, which can be great. That can be sweet. But then there are other people too who will just say like, I should really hit the gym after watching that, or I shouldn't eat that last cupcake or whatever it is.
Exactly.
I know that it's probably not their intention to create this shame cycle. They're just trying to create this kind of fantasy. But I don't know how much I agree with that, because especially for young women too, like young girls trying to figure it out, looking at that, I just don't know how helpful that can be. And there's nothing wrong with watching it, but just.
No, I agree with you. I'd rather, I mean, like, I don't buy my underwear from Victoria's Secret really anymore. Not that I don't like their stuff. Like, I'm sure they still have fabulous product, but I feel much more comfortable going into Aerie. And just because even like you'll see on the wall, you know, when they have like images of people wearing their stuff and just that kind of thing, and they have people of all sizes, all colors, all backgrounds, and it's just, to me, and my, again, with my own lens, it's so much more inviting. And I feel so much more at home in an atmosphere like that.
I agree, because you don't feel like you walk in and you're like, oh, well, my body type isn't what's on the walls. Like, is this, like, it's hard to feel shopping there, because you almost feel like, is this for me? If I'm not a 6-foot tall model who is a size 0, am I like welcome here? It doesn't always feel that way. I've seen the advertising at Aerie, and I like that. I appreciate that so much, like just the different diversity, because everybody should be represented, not just one narrow type of beautiful. I think everybody should.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. So as I was kind of saying before too, sorry guys, I'm like.
No, and then I derailed us, and I
went in a different direction. It's fun. I'm just like looking up here too. So yeah, I've done videos and photo shoots that promote a healthier, more supportive outlook on body image. One of the driving forces behind these projects was to support other women and my own self in this journey of not really feeling good enough. So the projects don't solve the problem by any means, but they just give voice to the struggle maybe that we're going through. I know that it's not just limited to women either. That's just kind of the population that I've worked with. But for any men who listen or are watching this, if you ever feel inclined to speak about these kind of issues, because I know you guys struggle with it too. I've definitely talked to men and they struggle with it as well. I think we would both like love to have a conversation with a male perspective on this too, because we want to give voice to that as well.
No, totally. And just even having a conversation surrounding shame. I think often we think of women when we think of shame and being vulnerable, but it's something that affects men too, and people of all backgrounds, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's interesting though. Like, I think men are less inclined to talk about it, but it almost feels like men struggle just as much as women do with this issue. So yeah, we just want people to feel normal about talking about these struggles. And if they are struggling, if you're a man and you're feeling like, oh yeah, I struggle with my image, don't feel shame, don't feel vanity or whatever you're feeling, or what you think you should be feeling. Just honor those feelings, and we want to have a conversation about that too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So I've found that I'm really comfortable opening up about my journey with anxiety and my journey with depression. But for some reason with self-image, I don't know, like I have a harder time being vulnerable with it. And I always want to be a transparent person. But being uncomfortable with the way I look, I feel like it has been something that's been difficult to talk about. And so that's kind of why I've done the projects, because it's sort of a way for me to validate my feelings without actually having to talk about them. So that's something that I'm trying to work on, just kind of being more open and transparent about my struggle, because it can be hard. For some reason, I don't know why it's easier for me to just say like, oh, I have anxiety, or like I've struggled with depression, but to say like I've struggled with my body image, I don't know why I don't place as much weight on it or value, but it feels kind of uncomfortable. And what about you, Carl's? Like, do you share in that?
I was gonna say I can totally relate to that. Actually, I had a therapy session yesterday with my psychologist, and we were talking about the limiting beliefs that I hold. And one of them that I actively kept kind of directing myself away from discussing with him was surrounding body image. And for me personally, I think it's because I can track it back so far, and it's so deep. Like the cut is so deep and it's so painful that I would rather just like avoid it, because it's just going to open a huge can of worms. Whereas for anxiety, I too like have struggled with that. Um, but it hasn't been for years and years and years. Like the buildup hasn't been so lengthy for me personally. And then when we like deconstruct talking about body image, there are so many societal values and constructs that we have to then kind of bash away at. So for me, it's just so much bigger of a process. And that's just what I've found personally.
I like how you say that too. That's so interesting. Like how you talk about how it goes so far back too, and to unpack all of that probably just feels like overwhelming. Hey.
Yeah, totally. That's what it is for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's hard, and my own personal journey with it. I think for a long time, when I would look in the mirror, it just wasn't really aligning with what I actually looked like. And I know a lot of people struggle with that. I always felt bigger than I was, and I started kind of eating less, over exercising. This was probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I'd say, when it got really bad, because I was always bullied when I was young, like for not having big boobs, and I still don't. It's just how God made me.
That's
And
okay. You're perfect.
thank you, you're perfect. And I think it's hard when you're bullied for your image, because it's tough when it's just something that you cannot control. You look at it, and I remember thinking like, hey, I can't control this though. Why are you bullying me? Bullying is never okay in any respect, but especially when it's something that you can't control. I would go to school and it was like, oh, Amelia's flat. It's like, yeah, but why is that a target? Like, why does that make me unattractive? And that that was something that I carried into my adulthood. But it sort of started to, I don't know, shift into something else almost. So I started to exercise about 5 years ago, and that was kind of where the problem started. I really had to learn how to exercise in a healthy way and not just obsess over my weight. So I wasn't so much concerned about not having a large chest. I was more about like my body. So I felt a lot of shame and very shallow for caring so much about my image too. I just remember like craving the feeling of hunger, which sounds kind of maybe kind of weird, and limiting my daily intake to kind of achieve that feeling. So the shame cycle perpetuated because I would think, well, I'm so fortunate to have food on my table. There's people in this world that don't have enough food in a day. How could I be so selfish to put my vanity above my gratefulness for the food that I'm provided? And so it created this feeling of hiddenness and not wanting to talk about it because of that deep shame. And I would also emotionally eat too until I felt physically sick. So it was kind of the pendulum swing of both sides. And then I would just cry while I was eating too, because I knew that I was getting sick, and I was just like stuffing my face with whatever I could find to kind of manage that feeling. And so it was kind of going from being really hungry to eating too much and feeling physical pain and not really finding this happy middle. So a lot of people do struggle with some sort of form of eating disorder or body image of sorts. And I just want to be open about my struggle and kind of normalize these feelings, because there's no shame in having a problem that you don't have the capacity to handle. And problem with food never progressed to a full-blown eating disorder, and I can thank my mom for that in a lot of ways. She was kind
Mm-hmm.
of recognizing some of my like obsessive behaviors with exercise, and she felt in her heart that an eating disorder was something that was going to be an issue for me just based on what she was noticing. And I remember coming home one day after I was driving for a long time, and I was sitting with my mom, and she asked me flat out, she's like, "Do you have an eating disorder? Like, are you struggling through something right now?" And she asked me to, like, do you feel like you're falling into one? Are you actively practicing one right now? And I just broke down and started to cry. Because we're a family of faith, she prayed for me, and something broke in me that day for sure. And I still have an issue with self-image, or days when I don't really feel good enough, but the power food or my image has over me is a lot less than it used to. But
Mm-hmm.
it definitely took like my mom recognizing something in me, like, Mila, you're exercising a lot, you're not eating as much as you used to, you're staring in the mirror a lot more than you used to, like, what's going on here? And even like admitting that something was wrong was hard. And that's tough when you're not ready to talk about something and it's so noticeable to somebody that you love, and they look at you and they ask you flat out, and you don't want to lie. The only thing that I really could do was cry, because that's the only way I felt like I could process my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good to have her support. So I think anybody who's kind of struggling through something, definitely talk about it when you feel inclined to, because the longer you stay in that, the longer the cycle perpetuates. And when you're kept in that shame, that's when we start to engage in more shameful behavior. And then we don't want to talk about it because there's so much and we don't know how to even begin. So I'm grateful
Mm-hmm.
that my mom kind of caught that early for me. And it never progressed into like bulimia or anorexia, but I was definitely on that road, and it's hard to talk about, but I'm still so glad that I'm able to share, and I'm glad we have this platform to share too. Sometimes I feel like, I share way too much, but in
No, no.
thank you. I think in another
It's
perspective, it's good to be honest.
it's very, very valuable. Everything that comes out of your face is hugely valuable. And thank you for being open and just sharing all of that. I know that it's not always the easiest thing to talk about. I think that it's so beautiful that your mom too was so open with you about it. I think a lot of the time we're scared to talk about things and we skirt an issue, and maybe someone who's struggling, it would help them to just directly ask them, yo, like, is this, like, do you want to talk about this? Is this like even a problem? Like,
Mhm.
and so I really like that she was open about having that conversation with you to begin with. And it sounds like it was overall hugely helpful to you.
Yeah, it was good. It was nice to have somebody like close to me just kind of ask me out of concern, not out of judgment,
Yeah.
is something going on? And like I said too before, it's hard when we're in this, where we live in Canada and we live in a place where we have enough food to feed the world, and we have so much in our fridge, in our pantry, and it almost feels like, well, how could I put my vanity over my gratefulness? And that was the hardest part for me to talk about, because I mean, I have family members who travel the world and they see starvation and they see people with not enough, and that was a hard thing to really talk about and open up about, because it feels like, well, okay, I minimized it. I was like, oh, I'm just like this privileged Canadian girl
Mm-hmm.
who's not happy with the way she looks. How, to me, I was like, how pathetic can I be? But it's not something that we want to minimize, because just because we're in this place where we do have enough food, it doesn't mean that we're not going to struggle with other things. And when I started to kind of open up and have a conversation about it, it got a lot better. And I live such a grateful life now. And I always have been, but just to feel that shame was really limiting. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that. So
Mm-hmm.
I just hope, like, anybody who's watching or listening to this, if you're struggling with your image, if you're struggling with an eating disorder of any sorts, shame just needs to go, because
Totally.
it just means that you have this problem that you can't solve yourself or you can't handle yourself. And there's no shame in that. Talking about it, having an open conversation, I think is really valuable.
I think it's so beautiful how you straight up label it too, right? Because we have to remember that our problems aren't a part of us, like not even close. So the further we can externalize that, the better.
Mhm.
and it'll help us not kind of take on that burden of the problem. Like it's not a part of us. Like, get out of here. Like, let's label it and just keep it as far away from us as possible. It's not a part of who we are in our existence.
I agree.
So I think that's really great that you did that.
Of course. Thank you for listening.
Of
Appreciate
course,
it.
of course, of
Do you
course.
want to? I know I have like kind of like 6 ways to be body positive, but I can do that at the end if you want to kind of talk about your journey if you want to do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Whatever. You can see that this all happens very organically. We don't really have a set plan,
Mhm.
which I think is what makes it so brilliant.
I It's just
So
fun.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Mhm.
Body image, again, is something that I've struggled with too, and my weight. And I was bullied quite a lot for it. And I think that the reason why I find it so hard to talk about is because I feel anyways, because our bodies are such visible creations, that we are so easily judged for how we look. Whereas like if someone saw me, they wouldn't be like, "Oh, she's so anxious. Like, look at her being so anxious." They wouldn't say that. But because of my outward appearance, like, "Oh, maybe she's fat," or whatever. And an interesting thing happened a couple of weeks ago. I was with some friends in a park. Don't worry, we were distancing and all of that good stuff. And we were just having an organic conversation about gaining weight and what that's looked like and how we've been struggling to work out and all those good things. And I had lent an article of clothing to a friend, and the friend had said while we were walking, she said, "Yeah, like I'm not fitting any of my clothes. Like I've had to even, borrow some things from Carly." And to me, that made me feel super shameful because I'm thinking, well, I'm bigger than her. And now she's saying, like, I don't even fit my stuff. Like I have to like borrow stuff from this bigger person, right?
Really
So
what?
I interpreted it that way, which is not the intent of the conversation. And I know that. Like, I'm very aware of how I process things, but I did take it on. And then the other friend proceeded to say, like, thought we were kind of joking it up, proceeded to say, because she kind of got the sense of how I was feeling, said, "Haha, like fat Carly." But she was joking, but her words cut so deep and they broke me down so much because that's a label that I've been associated with and been called throughout my life. So everything kind of came pouring back,
Mhm.
and I didn't really know how to handle it. So we sat down, and I was clearly not doing okay because I'm processing and doing my own thing, being in my head, and I know they didn't mean anything by it. But words can have such an effect, and especially with how we interpret words and how we've related them to different aspects of our life and our own worth, especially. So I definitely internalized those words. And I sat down with them and I said, "Hey, I just want to be super open with you guys. That really hurt my feelings. And I know it wasn't the intent at all, but when you hear like one of your friends call you fat,
That-
it's just never okay. Especially because I've struggled with my weight my whole life, that kind of thing." And they were super good and apologetic, of course, and they were really, really sorry that they had hurt me. But I took like a whole day after that and still processed it
Right.
like very, very deeply. And it was a good process for me. It was definitely needed, but the next day one of my friends had one of the friends from the previous day had approached me and said, like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I said, "Honestly, not great. I kind of internalized some of those things from yesterday, and I just don't really like want to talk right now. It's not, I know you didn't have malicious intent, but I need to process this, and it's going to probably take me like a couple days, but I don't really feel like talking to you right now." And it took a while. We had like a super organic conversation surrounding that, and I'm glad I was open about it. But I think that they better understand kind of where I'm coming from with that. So it was overall like a good experience.
Mhm.
Um,
People just need to be
so
words. Like
sorry.
people just need to be careful with their words though, like how they say things because
Yeah.
I think like being a sensitive person, people don't mean to be insensitive, but I've definitely like I take things personally. So I'm a sensitive person and I try to curb that. But I think it's really important, like, to give people awareness of what they, not what they can and cannot say, like, not control their speech, but
Yeah.
just say, hey, look, like, it's not really appropriate for you to make a joke like that because it's not funny. I'm all for humor, like, I love to laugh, but yeah,
Yeah, of
exactly.
course.
It's not about that. It's just about at the expense of someone else. That's not really fair. And although their intent wasn't to be hurtful or mean, I think it's really great that you approached it the way you did and just said, hey, look, like, this really hurt me and that's not okay. And now they'll know for next time to be more sensitive and to not say a comment like that.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to like flip it on them. I said, like, honestly, how would you feel regardless of the context? Like, I don't give a shit about the context, pardon my language, but if I said ha 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 like fat and then I threw their name in there, you know?
Not okay.
Like, and they said, "Oh, yeah, honestly, you're right. Like that sucks. That hurts me."
Yeah.
Because they had dealt with the same stuff, you know, like most of us have before in their life as well, right? So, I know that they're good people. They didn't mean anything by it, but words do definitely have an impact for sure.
We need to be careful with what we say.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
think good. Like you said, their intention wasn't to be hurtful. It's just a matter of, hey, that's kind of like crossing a line and that's not really okay to say. Even if somebody doesn't struggle with their weight or their body image, I think it's always inappropriate to say the word fat. I just think it's a really hurtful word.
Yeah, I agree completely with you.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was a little like more of a recent kind of development with that. Um, Yeah, as I mentioned, like growing up, I was often bullied. I remember I would go to this summer camp, and again, like people would label me as fat, overweight, whatever. And that was growing up. So I don't know. I feel like I was maybe 11, 12. And then there was one year where I like grew semi boobies. Like they weren't like, you know, they were like where you like wear a training bra kind of. And I like got called out for this one girl. I don't remember exactly what she said, which is probably a good thing.
Mhm.
Um, but she basically said that the only reason that I, you know, like sprouted early was just because I was overweight. And so, yeah, we've dealt with this for a big chunk of our lives. Um, yeah, I mean, it's something I still struggle with periodically. One of the only things that I have found really great for my body is going for a run. It really, really, really helps me. I've just noticed it to be hugely effective in kind of my weight management. And a couple of years ago, I broke my foot, and it's something I'm still dealing with. And now I have arthritis in there, and it's just not great. So for 2 years, I wasn't allowed to run, and so I like definitely did gain some weight for sure, and that was just a really hard period in my life. But as we're going to talk about later, there are some key things that I took away from that period that really, really helped me out a
Mhm.
lot, in feeling better about myself, in engaging with other people, in sharing my experience and talking to people. And yeah, so I know that we'll get to some kind of little tips later. Um, but yeah, actually, that's all that I have. So we can go into that right now if you want.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing too. I really appreciate
Yeah,
that. I think the
of
audience will
course.
appreciate that too, and
Of course.
vulnerability and being bullied too, and just being more sensitive to what we're saying to people. I always like look at it and think, don't you want to be the kind of person that lifts people up? Like, don't, obviously you don't want to just people please everybody or compromise who you are, but I just think it's important to understand, like, I hate to use the word should, but let's just try to be kind people who lift other people up instead of insulting them or making them feel bad, because I don't understand like why people would even want to be that kind of person. And I guess sometimes when you're young too, like it's about insecurities and that's kind of when the bullying happens. But especially in your adult life too, if you're acting that way, if you're bullying people or belittling them, cut that out. That's horrible
Just
behavior.
just enough.
Just
Stop it.
be a kind person. Life is hard enough. Let's just be kind.
I always totally. I always before I say something, I definitely go through it in my head and
Yes.
I think about how is this going to make me feel?
Mm-hmm.
And how is it going to make everyone around me feel? And
Right.
if the answer is like, I'm not really sure, then I probably don't say it,
Oh,
to be quite honest with you. Yeah.
that's good. You think about things, but you're a sensitive person too. So like sensitive
Yeah,
to what you're going to say to somebody and like you're going to think about them first, which is such
totally.
a great quality.
Every time, even like before I send a text message, I read through it and I'm like, could this, any of this be interpreted? It's my own stuff for sure. But could any of this be interpreted as hurtful?
Same. That's funny. That's
And
so
I know you do the same thing, which is why I'm bringing it up. And honestly, like, I've processed that that's the way I am,
yeah,
and I have no qualms with it. Like, I'm comfortable with it.
amazing.
So,
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing everything.
no, thank you. And also, I realize I'm drinking water. I'm just feeling so dehydrated today for some reason. So don't mind me.
Sip on your Dasani. Is that how you say it? Dasani.
So I bought this, and then this is my own water. I just like refilled it, but
Oh, you're good.
so
Awesome.
good stuff.
Awesome. Do we have, okay, so I have those six ways to be body positive. Is that the list?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amazing. Do you want to go one for one?
Well, yeah, and I also have some tips, just like my own stuff. So if you even want to go through those, and I can go through my stuff or whatever, I'm
Let's
easy.
do it. Let's
Cool.
do it. I do this a lot. I need to stop.
I do like.
People always tell me I talk to my hands way too much, and I'm just like, so? When
That's
am I,
not a thing.
like, it's how I express myself.
I just play with my hair a lot.
Well, same.
And I remember going to a bar. I'm not wearing extensions now. Ooh la la. But I
Yes.
used to wear extensions all the time, like you know.
Hmm.
And as you know, oh my god, I cannot speak properly today at all. I really apologize. But I used to wear extensions all the time. And I remember going to a bar, and because I play with my hair so much, and especially when I was wearing extensions, they would get all tangled and gross. And this bartender said, "Stop playing with your hair so much." And now I'm super conscious of it. I'm like, oh, I'm playing with it too much. But
Like,
you
I
know,
think
whatever.
like it's
You
not.
gotta live your life, you know?
You gotta live your life. I do the same thing. I'm glad we're the same that way, so we can just both be on that.
We're good.
Perfect. Okay, so I got like some. I looked these up. I forget what website they're from, but they're good. I like them.
Cool.
So these are 6 ways to be more body positive. I understand, like, you're not just gonna like apply these to your life and like be fixed, but there's just some helpful tools. So, number 1, focus on what your body can do. This is a great reminder that you're so much more than what you look like. Your body works really hard to keep you alive. Number 2, question what you see in the media. Be aware of comparing your body type to other people because we're all built differently, as we kind of touched on before. Number 3, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, unfollow people who make you feel bad about yourself. It is not rude. It is self-preservation. Like, put yourself first. Number 4, say thank you when someone compliments you. I know it's kind of tough because sometimes people compliment you. People compliment me. I'm like, oh, thank you. And I don't want to accept it. But just own it, because showing gratitude for that compliment is telling that other person too that you're grateful for what they said to you, instead of like sloughing it off like it was nothing. And also just like embodying that. Like when someone tells you you have a beautiful outfit, or like you look really good, or your hair is nice, whatever they say thank you, instead of like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm the worst for it. I'm like, no, I'm good. But like, say thank you.
I'm so bad for this. And it's interesting because when someone else accepts a compliment from me, it probably not only makes them feel great and validated, but it also makes me feel awesome for the great compliment that I gave them. You know, like it goes both ways. And it's funny because Carter complimented me yesterday, and he just said, "You've been working so hard. I'm so proud of you. Like you're whatever, all of this stuff." And I was like, no, I could be doing so much more. And I'm the worst at it. And then I told him, I was like, this is interesting because we're talking about this tomorrow. And it's so great because even if there's some advice in the podcast that we're giving, it's so important for us to be like, you know, we sometimes suck at this too. Like we're human beings. just because we're dishing out this info doesn't mean that we practice it perfectly all the time, every day, all day, right?
I completely agree because it's hard. Sometimes it's easier to like give advice or tips than to actually implement them. So yeah, it's good to like humanize our experience too. We're not like we do this every day and we get up and we have all these things. Like we're struggling too. We're doing this for ourselves and for the people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that one's a hard one, number 4. So number 5 is focusing on other people's good qualities. So instead of looking at somebody else, like trying to figure out what's wrong with them, try to shift your focus, hocus pocus, shift your focus on the positives because this is going to spill over into how you feel about yourself too. And number 6, I think this is like the most important one. Well, they're all important. This one's solid. Hang out with positive people. Surround yourself with people who encourage you and help you feel confident because I'm sure, Kyle's, you share in this experience too of having people around you who like passive aggressively insult you all the time and then you leave that interaction feeling like, what? I thought we were friends. Is that what a friend is? And you leave feeling horrible about yourself. So just dump those people.
Yeah, we've definitely had those people in our lives. That's for sure.
And it is exhausting and it's confusing and it's just not very kind. So being with people who aren't going to lift you up, I'd rather have no one in my life than like 10 people who treat me like that just to say that I have friends. And I'm fortunate because I have you, Carl's, and a few other select people that are wonderful. But I've definitely had to let go of friendships for that reason because it's not great to walk away from an interaction feeling horrible about yourself.
No, especially if you start to internalize what they're telling you, and that happens all the time, and it's really not a good time.
Yeah, exactly. So those are my tips, my 6.
Love it.
Be body positive. I hope they help.
Thanks for sharing those. I had a lot of the similar stuff. I'm like Amelia said, unfollowing accounts. I've done that a lot, especially recently, and it's been the best. Mm-hmm. Now I follow body positive accounts. I follow my close friends. I went on a binge and it was the best. And then memes because they make me smile. Mm-hmm. And if something can make me laugh, then it is for sure staying on my friends list. Absolutely, no questions. Not watching certain shows kind of goes along with you were talking about media in general. So for me, I used to watch like America's Next Top Model and all those shows, and I just don't anymore. I would just rather watch. I've been really into magic lately, which is this is totally a different direction. But anyways, I've been watching a lot of magic and just like goofy shows. Modern Family is the best.
It's so fun.
Shows that are like diverse and fun and make you laugh. Anyways, it's pretty fun. What else? We both attend therapy, and that's been really in the past. I just started with a new person, but in the past has been really, really helpful in like uncovering my shame talk, and the expectations kind of placed on us as women by society. So kind of digging through those has been really, really helpful in processing what that looks like, and how it's implicated me and affected my life and how I view bodies in general. That sounds bad, bodies. Like, I feel like that sounds like I'm talking about dead bodies, but not. how I think about, our bodies, human bodies. That sounds worse. Anyways, it's fine. You know what I'm talking about.
No, I got you.
Letting myself, snack and be free with my snacking. Such a blessing. Like we talked about, maybe not 10 cupcakes, but usually if I have treats around, I sometimes will eat them.
Same.
So sometimes what I'll do is like, say I have a bag of chips, I'll like divvy out some chips into like a little Ziploc, and then I'll have like, so when I go into the cabinet, they're already divvied up, and then I can be like, slick, these are my snacks for the day. Sounds good. The trick is not to go back for another bag, but if it's divvied up, I know I know how much is in there, and I know I've already had my snacks, and sounds good, you know?
Oh,
Um, so it can be hard to show the restraint, but or
right.
I don't know. If you have 2 bags one day, sounds good. If you have a whole bag, whatever. But maybe you're not doing it all the time, and who cares? It's your body. Um, Practicing self-care, obviously super, super important. I've been taking lots of baths lately, focusing on my music, which has been tremendously helpful. I write myself positive notes and I stick them on the mirror, so little affirmations, which has been really helpful. Amelia knows this. I've been starting to take videos before I go to bed about, like what I see, how my day was. What it can be honestly whatever you want it to be, but I found it really helpful in processing my emotion and looking inward. And yeah, so I don't know. That's been like kind of, I would tap that onto my self-care regime. Engaging in discussions and conversations like we're doing right now is just tremendously helpful in sharing our experiences. And like, we would love to hear about your experience. If you have us on Instagram, if you want to send us a note, if you ever want to come on our podcast, it's really important that we share together, and just normalize these feelings. Yeah, eating well, exercising has been really helpful to me. And now that I'm able to run again, that's been really wonderful. Just educating yourself on different body types, different builds. Like you had mentioned before, spending time with people who are genuine, authentic, and make you feel like you're at your best. So like Amelia does that for me. This podcast is a huge thing in my life that makes me feel very, very positive. So engaging in practices like that. And honestly, things that make me feel positive just in general, not necessarily about my body, but I feel like that comes along with just feeling positive in general, is just spreading love and doing little acts of kindness for people around you. So yeah, those are my things that help me or have helped me.
Oh, those are awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those. Those are also
Of course.
I love
Of
it.
course, of course.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for listening and yeah, just being with us in this time of quarantine and learning about body image. We really appreciate you.
Stay safe and be well.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.